So coming from a business background, the general buying process of real estate, I think is completely backwards. Most people when they're buying a home, they're very frustrated because they don't know what to do. They don't know the steps. They don't know how to get there. And I think agents do a very poor job of walking them through the process. My name is Darson Grantham. I'm a local real estate agent and investor here in Des Moines, Iowa. I've worked with dozens and dozens of people that are relocating to Des Moines, selling their house and moving away from Des Moines, investing in Des Moines. And one of the things that I get questions about all the time is what exactly is the process of buying a home? So I've broken it down in this video are the 7 steps to buying a home in Des Moines. So the first step is, in general, you need to know what the financing looks like. When I say financing, it could be lending institution, mortgage broker. If you're buying in cash, skip this segment and go to the next. But if you are financing, you need to know what your purchasing power is. Purchasing power has changed a lot over the last couple of years, where your income is and what that payment is on the different prices of houses. A good way to do that, go to Zillow. They just rolled out shop houses based on mortgage payment. Mortgage payment's gonna include your principal, your interest, your taxes, insurance, and homeowners association. I thought that was really cool that Zillow put out there because that way you're not looking at properties that you can't afford or don't feel comfortable affording. And that fluctuates with what the mortgage rates are. So you will have to put in the mortgage rate that you can expect, but Zillow uses the national average and usually they're conservatively high. So you should be able to get a better one than what they're putting out there. The next step is finding the ideal property. I am a local real estate agent in Des Moines. I am happy to help you find your next property and go through all of these things with you. If you're like, hey Darson, just set me up on a filter. I want to start looking at properties. That's fine too. I don't really care. I just want you to know when you go through the buying process, there are things that you need to know that most people are not needing to know or not learning before they start the buying process. And this seems really easy with all of the apps that we have available. You get to see pictures of everything that's available. But what those apps and those photos don't do is they don't drill down into the neighborhoods. They don't drill down into the layout of the house. They don't ask you the tough questions. And my argument is a good real estate agent will take you through a buyer consultation and they will help you determine what that ideal property is. Location, parks, what restaurants are available, what are the things that you do for fun. If you're moving to Des Moines, does Des Moines have the things that you want to have? AAA sports or minor sports, but we don't have pro sports. We don't have kayaking in general. We don't have many mountains. We have bike trails. We don't have an ocean, right? You need to know, hey, the hobbies that I do at my current city, what is available in Des Moines? And then drill down into the neighborhood. How far am I gonna drive if I wanna go jump on a bike trail and do some road biking or mountain biking or hiking? Different things like that you need to know. Our family, we love parks. A couple years ago, my wife did a 45 park tour in the Des Moines Metro. And you're like, Des Moines has 45 different parks? I will tell you, a lot of them are not advertised well, but there are city parks all across the Des Moines Metro that a lot of people don't know about. If you are purchasing in certain neighborhoods, beneficial to know if there are things that you like to do and your family likes to do within walking distance. You need to know what type of property that you're gonna purchase. Are you purchasing new construction that needs renovation, doesn't need renovation? Are you purchasing a condo or a single family house? Or is it one of those single family houses in a townhome type community that has HOA fees, but it is a standalone house? They call those villas. What type of property do you want? All those things are gonna be hashed out in a buyer consult that a good agent is gonna help you do. Once you figured out your ideal property, the next step is to figure out how many of those ideal properties get sold every month. Because if you can see that 25 of those properties are sold every single month, then you know that the likelihood of the property that you want to come up next month is, what's that? 25 divided by 4. A couple every week. If that's the case, you don't have to stress about finding the ideal property and it should happen bang bang right away. Now, if your ideal property is listed and only 1 or 2 of those get sold every month, you know when a property that you want to see that meets your ideal property comes up, you need to move really quick. You need an agent that will jump on it. You need to be willing to have your finances all set. You need to have all of the things that goes into making an offer figured out before you go see that property. Because once it comes up, it's going quick. There's only a couple of them. The next step is scheduling and evaluating properties. And I kind of talked about that in the last one. When a property comes up, you need to know and you need to jump on the phone with your agent to talk about, hey, does this meet all of the criteria that I want? Is there anything that you know, agent, about this listing that I should know or we should know before we drive out and go see it? And sometimes the agents are going to know. Sometimes the agent will have no idea. The agent should call the listing agent to get some more information about the property. Maybe the motivation of the seller, any quirks that the photos aren't showing online, because we all know how lovely listing photos are. And then we get to the property and we're like, that is not what the photos were. That happens more often than not. You need to have that conversation with the agent that's helping you buy the property, because they're going to be able to vet that out so you don't go to the property and get bamboozled and waste your time. The other thing about looking and seeing those properties is when something comes up and it looks too good to be true, it just might be too good to be true because the listing agent and the seller strategizing around a multiple offer situation. I have many clients that were searching for homes. We're searching for $200,000 to $300,000 homes, that are 3-bed, 2-bath in certain zip codes. And when we see one of those come up and it's listed for $150,000, we're like, what is wrong with that property first? And if all the photos look really good, I call the agent. The agent's like, yeah, it's great. Nothing's wrong with it. We're just looking to sell really fast. A good agent is going to tell you, the buyer, hey, they're going to have multiple offers on this. It's going to go over asking because they need to sell really quick. And they're basically looking at a bidding war. And war sounds bad. We're going to have to put our best foot forward immediately. And if done correctly, we already have that figured out, because we can evaluate and basically run comparables to the property. And I can share with you, or a good agent can share with you, hey, these 5 properties sold for $250,000 that are comparables to this property. They're literally what an appraiser is going to use to appraise the property. So since that's the case, we should offer $250,000. If you're not willing to go over list price on a property when your agent brings you all the comparables, then you need to understand what the listing strategy was. A good agent should talk you through that. We'll just put it that way. I say that because the listing price, and I'm a firm believer in this, some agents do it to a science. Some agents throw a listing price into the wind and it's just a guess due to skill, due to not understanding the market, due to the type of property and there not being any comparables. And so you need to know a list price can at times just be a shot in the dark for the listing agent. Us as the buyer's agent, we kind of have to do the work for them at times and educate you as the buyer to make sure that we are all on the same page of the quality and the value of this property based on the market conditions.
I would love to get you set up on a filter that meets the criteria of the properties you're looking for. If you're an investor and you're trying to find flip properties, if you're an investor and you're trying to find turnkey rental properties, or just grandma's house that you're trying to maybe live in and house hack, fix up while you're there and then sell it or keep it as a rental in a year, please reach out to me. I can set you up on an MLS filter that instantly hits your inbox when properties meet the criteria. I've got a handful of investor criterias that I really think that you're probably going to want if you don't already have that set up. What I don't like about Zillow, which is probably what you're using to look at houses, is Zillow will hide properties from you just to get you to come back on the app later. So if they know you're really going to like a property, they actually could hide it from you on your filtering process so that you come back later. They're a tech company. They love big data. That's what they do.
The next on the list is writing an offer that gets accepted. And I've talked about this a little bit, but when you write an offer to get accepted, you are taking into consideration the wants and needs of the seller and what you are willing to risk as the buyer. Because when you're going into contract with somebody else, you have risk and you need to put some of your cards on the table. Don't show all of your cards, but you need to put some of your cards on the table. When I say cards on the table, things like what is the best offer that you can make? And if you don't want to make that offer, maybe you write an escalation clause or an escalation addendum. Or can you get your agent to ask the listing agent if they've had any offers on the property? That will tell you what maybe your offer price should be. You don't want to say our max offer is going to be X dollar amount because that's what we're pre-approved. You don't necessarily want to lead with that as the buyer to the seller or the listing agent. But putting that all plan and a strategy in place is very important. What is your inspection contingency? Yeah, I know over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of buyers that have said, we're just going to waive the inspection contingency. Out of the 60 transactions I do a year, I'd say less than 5 will waive inspection, period. Because I don't feel comfortable doing that. There's too many hidden things that an inspector is going to find that you need to know as a buyer. Now, what we can do is write an inspection agreement that basically says the buyer will take on all of the repairs found in the inspection, but if something is found that is not visible to the eye, we want to be able to cancel the deal and get our earnest money back. Most sellers, quite frankly, are okay with that because if it's not visible to the eye, the seller probably knows about it and it was in the seller disclosure. They didn't know about it and an inspector finds it, a seller is going to most are going to understand and be, I really want to know what an inspector is going to find that I can't visibly see. You can get creative on these offers. You can get creative on the timeline to close. You need to do a 30-day and you need to rent back to the seller? Possible. Do you need to sell your house and you need the proceeds from your house to cover the closing costs or cover the down payment on the new house? Like All of those things can be written up. They should not deter you from making an offer. They might change the quality of offer that you're getting to the seller, right? So a seller sees an offer from you and it says you have to sell a house that is probably overpriced before you can close on their house, right? A seller's probably not going to be super pumped to accept that offer. But if they can see that your house is a solid house, it's not a unicorn, it's probably going to sell really quick, they'd be more likely to accept that offer. One of the things that you need to do as the buyer and make sure your buying agent is doing is they're sending over comparables for the property you need to sell to the seller, so the seller knows, hey, the property that these buyers that are buying my property, it's not overpriced, it's going to sell, we're going to be good to go. Next on the list is during due diligence, you're going to have an inspection. It's the first time I use the word due diligence. Really, that's just your inspection period. During that inspection period, you're going to hire a professional inspector, a general inspector, maybe a mold inspector, air quality inspector, sewer line inspector, maybe a radon inspector. Those inspectors are going to look at the property and give you a report. Every single one of them will find something wrong of some capacity, even on new construction. It is their job to find things wrong. You then have to determine, and I will help you as your buying agent, determine what's important on this report, what's a safety hazard, what is my family not willing to accept, what risk am I going to accept by buying this property knowing these things are wrong. If there are things that are wrong that are offensive or things you didn't know about, you can ask the seller to fix those things. In the last 2 years, a lot of people said, you can't ask the sellers to fix anything because it's completely a seller's market. No buyer will get their offer accepted. I would say 80% of the transactions that I did, we had some type of seller concession. That's completely false. And now in today's market, in 2023, you absolutely have the opportunity to ask the seller to make repairs or provide seller paid closing costs. There's a risk in doing this, sort of. If you push too hard, the seller will just say, hey, no deal. If you don't ask for anything, it will be the same thing as asking the seller to fix one thing. Meaning, if you ask for something on the inspection and the seller says no, you can say, okay, I'll buy it as is, no big deal. If you don't ask for anything, it's the same thing the seller telling you no the first time. Now, let's take a step back. If you ask for, say you want the seller to take down a dead tree, the seller says, no, I won't take down a dead tree, but I will fix the eave spout that you also asked or that you were questioning, right? And the buyer says, no, I want the tree taken down. That's a counter. And the seller can then walk away from the property and cancel your transaction. It is a buyer's agent to help you understand the decision that you're making and the risk that you're taking. Can the seller just take the property in the contract and void it? Or do they have to answer and then you can still get the property in one way or another? And that's a buying agent's responsibility. So when you're talking with a good buyer's agent, it will help walk you through that process. Now we get down to after the inspection, I call it kind of the dead period between the agent and the buyer on the buy side, because you've already been through inspection. All that's happening now is the bank is trying to figure out, is the buyer ready to finance? Is underwriting having any questions with you, the buyer? Has really nothing to do with the buyer's real estate agent, besides maybe timing up maybe an appraisal, a title opinion, and a final walkthrough. So at this point, about 5 to 7 days prior to closing date, we're gonna have a really good idea. Is underwriters, are they clear to close? Do you have pretty good understanding of what's going on? If they are, let's schedule the final walkthrough. Scheduling the final walkthrough a couple days before closing. Typically, the bank and the settlement company is going to pick where the closing is going to happen, and they're going to communicate with you, the buyer, what dollar amount you need to have at closing. They're going to tell you, can it be a wired fund? Can it be certified check? Where does that money, is it coming from the proceeds of a previous sale? All of that's really lined up with the bank and or the settlement company. I say settlement company, it's also like a title company. That can all be kind of interchangeable in that last 7 days of a transaction or before the closing. Now say you get to the final walkthrough and the seller has a ton of stuff in the property and you want them to have that gone. You can delay closing. You have that right, usually in the contract. If the seller just says, no, I'm not taking that stuff out of the property, are you, the buyer, willing to purchase with all that stuff in the property? Sometimes a seller, they kind of just say, oh, I'm done with this. It's not fun as a buyer, but you need to be ready and be willing and be prepared to make that decision. I've seen both things. I've seen sellers that'll maybe credit the last 2 or 3 days before closing, say, hey, I couldn't get everything out. You need to hire a hauling company to get rid of the rest of my personal items. I'm sorry. The cleanliness that you should expect a property when you're closing is broom clean. And now I've seen all different qualities and types of broomed, clean property. Some people will wipe it down, some people won't. And you as the buyer have to determine what is the risk that you are willing to accept. Are you willing to cancel or close that deal because the sellers are not doing what they promised to do in the contract? A lot of details there, a lot of negotiating back and forth at times. Sometimes it's super smooth, but you just need to know that's kind of where that's at in the process. Then we get to the closing table. like, we're done. You've brought the money. You're bringing your IDs. You're signing the mortgage. You're sitting down with the bank, the closing company, and you're signing everything. Usually that's when you're getting your keys to the property. Now, some buying agents will be there to help you, to walk you through that. Honestly, I don't attend very many of my closings. And the reason for that is because at that point, there is not much I'm going to do besides be a shoulder to cry on, or someone to hug you, or high five you. Like, there isn't anything a buyer's agent is doing at the closing table because the keys are there from the listing agent and all that's done. So in order to not complicate things, I usually am not going to attend the closing. Now, I will either meet at the property, say hi, bring a closing gift at that point. There's something there that I'm going to kind of shift, and you're going to, you're now a current client and not a prospective client because we've got to the closing table. So the next steps for you are going to be, hey, let me as the buying agent know, are things the way you wanted when you move into the property? Is there anything I can do to help? I'm not going to help you move into your property. I'm sorry, it's just not something I'm going to do, but I can help you find a moving company or maybe some haulers to help you move from one another. If it's a big project, you probably need to have that conversation way before closing time. That's all stuff that I'm happy to help out with. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up kind of an automatic reach out to you to check in with you on, hey, do you need anyone to help renovate your house? Is there anything that's wrong with your house that you knew about when you were buying, you were fine with it then, but you don't want it now? Maybe it's painting, maybe it's flooring, or maybe big additions. I'm happy to help introduce you to vendors or contractors, help you through that process. The other thing that I'm going to promise is you're going to get a home evaluation every single year to see what the value of your house is. I know there are lots of apps and programs out there. They'll tell you this is what the value of your house is based on other sales, which is great, except those are algorithms that don't take into account condition. They're just taking into account the data that you can see in the MLS or on Zillow. Not, hey, how clean was the property? How updated was it? All that good stuff. None of that is in there. So what I'll do is I'll put together basically an annual report, and it'll tell you the property value of, if we listed today, what that property is worth. I think it's a very incredible, important thing for you to know because it impacts your financial net worth, your financial statement, your ability to know, hey, can I move up to my next property in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Or is there no way I don't have any equity in this? And with realtor fees and selling and blah, 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 I'm literally going to lose money. I don't want to do it. So I think it's a very good financial tool for you to know that every single year. Do you need to know it every day? No, you shouldn't look at your stock market every day. But the value of your house, you should know, I would say annually, to get a good grasp on what the value is. If you found this important, valuable, my name is Darson Grantham, local real estate agent here in Des Moines, Iowa. Please, happy to help out, and I'll see you next time.